How's it going? Those are the ones you can't believe, you know, if somebody's getting throttled, but you're going, well, this is probably how this is. But when it's close, those look
I
like.
consider saying that. Right. Yeah, that's true.
How we doing? Connie's fast on your heels.
We were racing.
Yeah, well, you had to park a ways away tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrestling and
There's one level above the handicap up there. See the fork road and yellow right up next to the building.
Yeah.
Must be really good at that.
no, I'm just kidding.
I didn't read the sign.
Shield? I just got a couple from you and then I got more word. For something I can buy. I want to give it to them. I don't know how you. Thousands.
By the tens of thousands, I think. Yeah.
All right, Scott, if I need to say something, can you guys hear me?
No, we
Yes.
can't. You're good, Tab.
All right, I'm going to go back on mute.
I think the question, Tab, is do we want to hear something from it? Just kidding.
Well, I sound suspiciously like Julie last week. We got the same grovel in our voice.
Okay, it's 6:30. The first meeting is going to be the public hearing, but I would like to start off with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Father God, we just thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for the freedoms that we have. We thank you for our ability to meet here. And we thank you for the blessings that you've given this community, Lord. We ask that your will be done in all that we do. In your son's Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, roll call, please.
Palmer,
Here.
Perry,
Here.
Downs,
Here.
Munson.
Here.
Smock,
Here.
Wagner. Here. Davis.
Okay, so item 2, or main item for this is the Board of Education selling of working cash bonds. Mr. Petrie.
Yeah, first, I'd just like to explain where we're at in this process. In December, early December, we held a special meeting with the point of issuing debt certificates, which we did at our December meeting. We did receive the initial $9.5 million for that. At this point, we're in the process of moving forward with the issuance of working cash bonds and funding bonds to improve the district facilities. And I know I had some handouts over there, but there are probably more people than were able to pick those up. So I just want to read that first paragraph to you. And this was some information that was available on our website since early in December as well. Mercer County intends to issue bonds for capital projects related to the improvements of existing facilities, including the possibility of a combined elementary school on the junior high campus in Joy. These improvements are based on the results of the board's long-range facility study begun in March 2020. In December, we issued the debt certificates. In January, we're holding our hearing, that's tonight, to issue the bonds to repay those, and also authorize the issuance of up to an additional $9 million in working cash bonds. The district will have the authority to issue that money for 3 years after following tonight's meeting. The levy that was approved in December of 2021 has baked in the ability to make payments on these bonds without increasing the tax rate from the 2020 levy. And we're able to do that because the district's seen a significant increase in its EAV over the last year. In fact, district-wide, that increased almost 11%.
So for public comment, it's 5 minutes per person, a maximum of 30 minutes. Is there a list, Julie?
Well, these would
the-
be comments related to the bond issue. If there are any.
We'll have another one for the regular.
Right, but I didn't know if there was a list for this one. Is there anyone who wants to speak related to the bonds only?
Are there questions from any of the board members?
You'll get another opportunity in our next, this is the bond hearing, so we'll adjourn and we'll go into the regular board meeting. You'll have another opportunity for public comments then as well, so.
Hearing none, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Palmer,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Bounds,
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Gates.
Yes.
Okay. That closes the public hearing on the bonds. We move into our regular business meeting. Call to order, please. Roll call.
Palmer,
Here.
Barry,
Here.
Bounds,
Here.
Munson.
Here.
Smock,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Gates.
Here.
Are there any additions or deletions? Okay. So we come to the public comment section. And again, it's 5 minutes per, 30 minutes total. But I did, board comments are afterwards, but as a president, I just wanted to kind of set the tone as I was thinking about this meeting and about all we're doing. And so we've had the unfortunateness of dealing with COVID over the last few years. And we were lucky enough at the same time or a little bit before to start a facility study that has led us down to working on trying to make the best decisions for the facilities in our school district. And I just wanted to share that up to this point, I really do feel that there's been respect for the majority of the time from the community, from the board members. Certainly, COVID and facilities study has brought out some strong passion and some strong opinions, but I think that's okay because that's what drives this country. That's what helps us improve and get better. I believe everybody has the best interest of our community and the kids, the taxpayers in mind, including on this board. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of this community. I'm proud of this board. And I would just ask that we continue forward, showing that respect, having your opinion. Don't stop your passion, have your passion. But let's continue to have that respect that we've got us here so far as we continue to move forward to improve on the school district and our community. So with that, Zach Frick.
Hi, I'm Zach Frick.
Mike, would you ask? Zach, could you step up to the podium, please? That way everybody can hear you. I do have a number of online observers.
Hello, I'm Zach Frick. I have a number of comments and also several questions. Being 5 minutes, if I can pose the questions, I'd like just a quick response so that way I can continue on. And also, if we can continue to discuss those later, that'd be great. In the survey, it mentions going from from 5 schools to 3 schools would be a savings of $1 million. With Joy currently being the 5th school and just going to have the pre-K, would there be savings if it just went from 5 to 4, or is that already figured in the $1 million?
There would be savings. There's savings by going from 5 to 4 as well.
Okay,
Yes.
so there is part of that savings there. Again, in going from 5 to 4 and the $1 million savings, with that $1 million savings, obviously there would be some changes in staff. How will that staffing change happen? Will the teachers be let go right away to save that $1 million? And would that look like teachers that are, obviously it's harder to get rid of a teacher that has tenure, so you're getting rid of teachers that are younger, less subscribed with the district, but also teachers that are likely going to develop families and then input back into the district, have kids go through the district. So we're declining our enrollment by getting rid of teachers as well. Is that kind of the teachers that would be let go as the younger teachers?
We're gonna try to do that through attrition
Yeah.
mostly, correct?
Yeah, and Zach, the public comment is not an interactive piece.
Okay.
The board will listen to anything that you have to
Okay.
say, and we may discuss some of those things later as a body, but
Okay.
it's really just a consideration. at this
Okay,
point.
well, I'll leave the questions then, but that does go to a good point of, if it's by attrition, that means that we're not actually saving that $1 million a year until 5 or 10 years, or whenever that attrition actually transpires and is done, because we're going to continue to pay that staff, so we're not actually saving.
People leave our district every year. There's multiple people that move or quit or retire. So I'm done talking, but it happens way faster than what you're thinking.
Also, with the $1 million savings would be an expected reduction to the tax levy. I don't actually figure that's going to happen. So it's $1 million savings to the district to spend elsewhere, but it doesn't have an impact on the actual communities and the tax-paying members as terms of savings back in their pocket. One big thing too is we live in a nation of capitalism, and there are 2 ways to you can either save money or you can make money. One of those great ways is we have a couple great communities in our population centers are both in Aledo and New Boston. And by growing those communities, rather than retracting this schooling to Joy, by growing those communities, you're going to, again, increase your revenue, being capitalistic rather than trying to just save on expenses. For example, millions of dollars have been spent in Aledo year after year for the last several years, with that continuing. A couple examples are there's going to be a housing addition in Aledo. If this happens, it's going to be hard pressed to continue to grow that housing addition or even have that housing addition happen because you don't have that elementary school in Aledo. The elementary school being in a community is the most important. It's what draws families initially and keeps them here. And getting somebody in school initially is the most important part of keeping them in a district, because once they're here, they're generally here to stay. That doesn't mean they don't move, but it happens. Additionally, the old junior high, as many of you know, is going to be a new apartment complex, $12 million project, 20 plus units. Again, more kids coming to the district. Again, more revenue coming. All things that are going to help. So if we can continue to increase enrollment or at least keep it steady rather than try to hurt enrollment by moving this to Joy and then hurting the communities and making them decrease. For example, New Boston is a great community, but it doesn't have a natural flow to it through it like Aledo and Joy do. If you want to go to New Boston, you have to go to New Boston. So for example, the gas station there, what are we doing to that by getting rid of the school. We're getting some of that natural drive to the Boston by getting rid of the school, because now we're not gonna have teachers, we're not gonna have bus drivers there. We're not gonna have other staff there to support that gas station. So likely that's gonna hurt their ability to thrive as well. I know moving the school out of Joy does hurt as well, but it has that natural presence by having a highway through it, so it continues to thrive as well.
And I'm gonna shut you off there, so you've used your 5 minutes, but I appreciate your information and the questions, and we'll be discussing it later on as well.
Thank you.
So,
Hey, Mike. Turn in his questions and we can reply.
yeah, so anybody that has questions that you have there, you can turn them into the board. There's actually a place, Ask the Board on the school website, and you're more than welcome to do that. We do a good job getting back to people with that, and that's usually posted as well. So you may have a question that somebody else has as well, but they haven't asked it, so. Brad Williams?
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I'm going to speak kind of loud because I don't hear very well, so I don't know if anybody else can hear as well. So I'll kind of try to address the room as I can. One of the things that I want to kind of build on with Zach a little bit there, we're talking about helping the our local communities and our economy. I understand that some might feel that that's not an obligation of this board to do that, but we do have a moral requirement as well, I believe, to do things for our community as best as we can, whether it be for food pantries or whatnot. So I would like you to kind of just do your best to weigh that in regards to what these things can do economically for the area. I have a personal concern that I love New Boston. I love Aledo. I love this community as a whole. I am not, the elephant in the room is that this might be an us versus them thing. If there's an Aledo Westman rivalry in here, I hope that it's ended finally. But we've got some big issues here in front of us. And, I know personally some members that have gotten married. They're looking at starting kids. They're within the armed forces. They're looking at moving to Aledo, but they're hesitant because they don't want an elementary school in Joy. They want an option that their kids can walk to school if they can. I know busing situation might get fixed. It's a pain. I understand. It'll impact me on the northwest side of the district if we build something in Joy. I would hope that this board at a minimum would entertain a motion to maybe table this for a little while so the community itself can hash this out. A lot more ideas, I believe, just from talking with almost all the members here, have been brought to the table. I'm also aware that originally there was a survey that was put out. I've shared with most of you why I think that it could have been slightly misleading. But, as a matter of fact, like I had told some of you already, that they said, well, let's just assume that those that filled out the survey that they would want a new building. Well, if it's assumed that those in New Boston and Joy would want one in Joy, well, then if 58%, I think, was the number of respondents were from Aledo, would it be safe to assume then that 58% were assuming that a new building would be built in Aledo? Just something to consider again, to where maybe we can hash this out. I have seen personally National Guard armories that have been built from contractors. They promise you a whole bunch of stuff, then all of a sudden they come in under budget because they cut corners. Not saying that that'll happen with this case, but those are concerns that I have. When I hear certain dollar amounts that come out from them, I'm hesitant. I really want to see. I've been in both schools. They're nice schools. They could use some work for sure. But the interactions that I've seen, maybe my anecdotal experience is different than others, but I do see that there are positives in both of those schools. So my interest is in the best of the district. I hope that, we try to remember that our emotions can get the best of us in a lot of these things. But one of the other points to get back to the National Guard armories was that they would propose these changes. We had an armory in Monmouth. We had an armory in Galesburg. They promised us all these savings, new HVAC systems, you name it. Long story short, they built this facility. It's roughly bigger than the other buildings, but because of the state requirements that they put upon us, it's inefficient. And it's actually one of the most expensive armories in the state. So I urge you to at least do, to question those that gave you those dollars estimates, just to fact check, please, if you would, to make sure we're talking about millions of dollars for the next 50 years of our children's education. And I'm not against those that want to build. I think everybody here has the best intentions at heart. But those some of those contractors then filed for bankruptcy, but then they recreated themselves a new company under a different LLC. And then the warranty wasn't there anymore. And the National Guard was stuck holding the bag on that. I have seen that multiple times. I'm not saying that you guys have talked to different contractors, but when I hear numbers and stuff, I'm always going to question those things, because we're talking about the taxpayers' money, and we're talking about our children's education. And we're talking about something that if we get this right, we're up against the state of Illinois right now. And so part of the reasons why we have our problems were the rules that were placed before this school board and this district on how the state says, like it or not. We got people leaving Illinois because it's Illinois, and we're fighting that. And I think that we have a chance here to come together, discuss things a little bit more, and maybe come together on something, actually be a beacon of hope here. And these kids can actually see that we as adults got together and came up with a really good plan that more people can get behind. Right now, I feel like it's too divided. And even if it goes to referendum, then it probably wouldn't pass, given the division currently. Thank you all for your time.
Ashley Dellett.
So Ashley Dellett actually cannot be here tonight due to illness. So
Oh, I
I would
see.
like to
Okay.
read her statement if that is allowed.
Yeah, that's fine. I was trying to figure out your name.
Erica, sorry. So my name is Erica, and I am reading Ashley Dellett's statement. Dear board members, it goes without saying, but for the record, I wholeheartedly support improving our two wonderful community-based grade schools and renovating our high school. It is my opinion and the opinion of many in our community that small schools are better and that having a great small grade school is essential for kids and the community too. However, we are not only talking about opinions. As someone who has had to delve into academic research many times on issues that impact people and their communities, my first thought was, doesn't everyone know that small grade schools close to home are better for kids? Upon examining a great deal of studies and research, the answer is a resounding yes. Small schools, often noted to be 300 to 400 kids, but sometimes even less, are found over and over to be better in many ways, particularly if they are closer to home. It is well known by now that for urban communities, closing schools and busing kids to what seemed to be better schools was not the answer they had hoped for. Long bus rides to schools not near home were taxing and created a disconnect between parents, kids, and schools. What has been found is that creating good schools within a kid's neighborhood with parental involvement has provided greater success. So on that note, our small towns have been getting education right in some ways all of this time. Kids are known and are connected. Of course, it goes without saying that these schools must be good schools. Thankfully, we have wonderful grade schools and teachers here. Of course, there are needed updates and items that should be addressed beyond those. It is important to hear what our educators have to say. While some will argue that one new school is the only answer, others do not support this option. I propose there are answers that don't harm communities. Further, a school of 600 is not the answer many of us want. I spoke with some recently about the concerns regarding curriculum. There seems to be a thought that curriculum is supposed to be generally the same, but the environment is different in the grade schools. If the schools are both good schools, I am not sure why they cannot have their own personalities. Curriculum can be standardized, and in today's world, it is not difficult to have teachers attend the same trainings, but teachers have to be able to adapt for the class they have and for each child. If there is an issue with not implementing curriculum, this must be addressed on an individual level. This can happen in any school. A principal in a huge school has more to manage, and problematic differences could still go unnoticed. Since the preferred model is for districts having small schools close to home, then there are obviously many good reasons for this model. I also spoke with a friend who grew up here and is a grade school principal in Colorado. She noted that their huge district of 35,000 kids operates numerous grade schools because it is known that small environment is better for kids. Districts are increasingly choosing to keep multiple small schools because they know this is in fact the better way. I understand it is a function of the school board to examine costs and be fiscally responsible. However, our district has operated 5 schools this entire time, and I did not hear people outraged about money. We are closing one building, which will save money already, and there are other solutions if we want to keep that property. District offices could remain there or simply keep the gym and field. Regarding money, there are some costs that cannot be counted with dollars and cents. When you are talking about our littlest kids, money is not the only thing that matters. I know some feel bound by the survey that was sent out. I also know you are tired of hearing about its flaws. I do understand much thought was involved. However, many saw it was slanted or were misled by it. I have heard people say the survey made it look like there are no good reasons to keep the existing grade schools open. How misleading and inaccurate. Further, one whole page alone was spent stating the options were to renovate for 17 million or build for 17 million. This was at the least an egregious error. It obviously led some to believe it would cost the same to remodel or update as to build. This page alone clearly tried to direct people to support a new school. Please don't use the survey alone to make your decision. How many time? I know the board was not in agreement and it's a terribly divisive issue. We have certainly dealt with much division nationally and locally. Please don't proceed with something you don't support and don't proceed with a proposal that cannot be undone. I appreciate the position you are in and I ask for you to please consider a compromise and an option that will unite most of us. To either use funds available now or propose a referendum question that would achieve this. To do needed updates and additional improvements to our grade schools and invest significantly in our high school that so desperately needs it. People want to be connected to their schools and schools connected to the community. Kids are happier when they feel connected, just like all of us. This connection is so important to success. One of the largest factors that influences academic success is parental involvement. This is known. If you want kids to do better, find a way to engage parents more, get them into the school and connect to the school. Help find ways.
All right, Erica, I'll have to cut you off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamal Parcher.
All right, my name is Tammy Parcher, and I know that there was another option that was brought to the board's attention almost a year ago that was very easily, could have been sold to this community and most likely not cause the division between us that we currently have going on right now. I'm here to discuss this option again, and hopefully a few of you will listen this time around and maybe see that it could still be an option. I'd like to suggest that we change the mindset of building on to MCIS for the junior high and make it for Apollo instead. Add the classrooms as needed and add on restrooms that would fit the elementary aged kids and move Apollo to MCIS. Building new classrooms in Joy to house the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and keep the ramp north, including the gyms. The district office could also stay in the vocational building in Joy as planned for 2022 and 2023, and New Boston could get the repairs it needs. Apollo would close and be sold for someone to use the building. There's no rush to tear it down, no reason to be wasting that money. It was also stated that a few of the board members want to build a gymnasium at MCIS for the Joy High School, for the junior high, and this would save that money also because we have no reason to tear down the gyms in Joy. All extra money that we would be saved doing this route could go into the high school. Now, next, if this can't be considered, then I would like to speak out on the pros and cons from having a joint elementary, since that's the only thing we've been hearing about lately. I've been hearing from the past week, save Apollo, save our small schools, keep the grade school in our hometowns. I've yet to hear any valid arguments as to why. There are emotional and personal reasons being tossed around, yes, but nothing valid or that a board should be basing a district decision on. We've been told before we're not supposed to use our emotions for decisions. The board members have each pledged to make a decision with the best interest of the entire district in mind. There are several valid points to build a joint grade school in Joy. Socially and emotionally better to combine students at the start of their childhood instead of at the 6th grade level. It's been stated by several surrounding school districts that the amount of attitude and bullying was decreased when the kids met at childhood over preteen years. There can be consistency across the curriculum for all the students. It eliminates the time it takes in 6th grade to get everyone in the same level, and each child would come in with the same opportunity and the same education as the next. New school would mean new technology opportunities, AD accessibility. All of our buildings currently fail in this category. Later bus times for kids. Kids may be on the bus for a few more miles, but it could make pickup times for some kids almost an hour later. At this point, the grade school kids in New Boston are sitting at the school for 55 minutes before their class even starts. My children get to New Boston at 7:15 a.m. and it's 7.7 miles from New Boston to Joy. They would be gaining 7 miles on the bus, but lose 55 minutes of sitting doing absolutely nothing because they can't. The Joy campus is only 7 miles from Apollo, the MCIS. I think it would be a more unified school district to have us all together. And last but should not be most beneficial information from the board is the financial sound. The district would have to maintain 3 buildings instead of 5. This is an estimated savings of $1 million+ each year. This savings could be spent on the high school, so essentially both projects would still be completed. The cons that I have been hearing are if we lose our grade school, we lose money on property taxes. Why is Aledo and New Boston property taxes more important than our families that live in Joy that we were so eager to tear down their building? Safety reasons. Apollo is close to the hospital, police, ambulance, etc. Do the 200 kids in New Boston not matter enough to have us 7.7 miles closer to those conveniences that you can't move 7 miles outside of town? Bus rides would be so much longer. Our little kids would be on the bus 7 more miles instead of sitting in a gym for a ridiculous amount of time each day, waiting for a ride to and from school. I agree that our high school needs an update, but a new high school is so far out of the budget that it will never happen. We need to continue making small upgrades to it and start working our way up. Making a huge update right now will not fix our problem. It just hides it for a few more years. I really hope that we can slow down, listen to the community, and maybe use the junior high, put it back in the gym, put it back in Joy. It's a centralized location. You know that, and put it back together. Like, if we don't want to close elementaries, that's fine. Leave them where they are, maintain them, but build in Joy for the junior high. That's all I got.
Brad Lucas.
I don't anticipate talking for 5 minutes, but I'm gonna start keep track here just in case. I just got a few notes here, so. I know you're presented with the challenge of wanting and needing to spend a large sum of money and trying out to figure out the best way to do that serves all the district. I'm a high school teacher. I'm a high school guy. I spent every year of my 25 years teaching in a high school. And I feel that if you're going to prioritize a large sum of money, that there are a lot of improvements that could be made and kind of need to be made at the high school. I feel that would probably go beyond what would be leftover money after other projects. And again, I've coached sports for 30 years, multiple sports, been all over the area, been in all kinds of schools. And I've only been in this community for a short time. And I think these things that you guys that already know are issues, but I feel like the cafeteria and commons at the high school is disastrous, if I'm going to be honest with it. In terms of schools comparable to our size and communities like ours, every place that I've been into, just with the traffic flow and the space available to the kids and the supervision that's involved with trying to supervise that, and the stuff that we've been through with trying to keep people 6 feet apart and when weather's nice, moving them outside. I just feel like there are things that with the office spaces, and I think some of the critiques you're going to get of that is spending money that's maybe not directly utilized by classroom space or educational space. But if you're in a lot of these schools, and again, the short time that I've been here, I know that we tend to look to the north of what your neighbors got, and those buildings and the facilities that they have are a little bit more attractive, a little bit more superior than what we have here. And I know that you took the time to went through a lot of trouble and effort to put out a survey, and in so many ways, the survey results came back and said that wasn't the case. But selfishly, probably biased when I look at the survey results, I see that that was answered by, no offense, that was answered by older people that don't have kids in school, and they checked the box that said that this is the cheapest option. Let's go with this. And I feel like the other option, that's the way that that was presented. And I'm even gonna put myself out on a limb here and tell you selfishly, you could open up a lot of available space at the high school if you put turf on the field, and then that opens up all that green grass between the high school and the football field for any other building projects that you want to do, because that space will be no longer needed for the practices. Yeah, anyway, that's just a selfish little plug on my part. But when you look at it, and I'm telling you, the locker facilities, we rarely use those in the fall because they are kind of crowded. They're not great facilities. And I know there's a lot of people that have been in this community and lived this community for a lot of years. I'm not knocking that. And there's been a lot of people that will think, well, you know, it's good enough when I went to school here, it should be good enough now. You guys can get by. But how many people are going to go home tonight and watch yourselves on the 10 o'clock news on the same TV that you were looking at in 1983? Okay, none of you are, right? You've all done remodels to your homes. You've all upgraded your vehicles. Oh, okay. So at any rate, like I said, I'm biased. I'm a high school guy, been in high school all the time. I got nothing against elementary school kids or teachers or anything like that, but just from my vast experience of being at that level, I see that there are some things that we could do to help. And a lot of the concerns have been about attracting people here. And I guess while I'm on it, well, I got one more minute. I feel that the one advantage that we have against those schools that we might be competing against for move-ins and enrollments is that your elementary school kids here go to school in the county seat, the town of 3,700, that none of those other schools to the north, at least the first two to the north, don't have. The one advantage is people moving to Aledo currently, that their kids with the change now to this school as being the middle school, they'll be able to move to town and their kids will be able to go to school here in town K through 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. We have time for one more spot. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak? Okay. At this time, we move to board comments.
I know it's an item later in the agenda, but I would just like to emphasize again the Mercer County Schools Excellence in Education Foundation having a matching grant drive this year before December 1st. If anyone makes a donation to the MCSD, the Lucy Flake Foundation matches that grant or matches that donation. And so if anyone feels they'd like to give back to the schools in any way, the Education Foundation then takes donations and they pay for some sort of project in classrooms for teachers. And so, like I said, Lucy Flake will match anything you donate between now and December 1st. And so I'd like to get that out there in the community. If everyone would like to consider that, you've got a few months. So, so I just want to emphasize that again.
Any other board comments? Okay, and the correspondence, I don't know if there were any correspondence. Okay. Item number 6, approval of consent agenda. Would any board member like any items separated out for discussion or vote? Not, then I would accept the motion to approve.
I'm going to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
Roll call, please.
Palmer,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Bounds,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Yates.
Yes.
Passes. Move on to item number 7, committee reports. Discussion or questions on finance? Comments or questions on building and grounds, which we'll have a discussion on that later as well, so. We don't vote on any committee reports. All right, anything on the policy committee? Did you want to?
During our policy committee, we reviewed some administrative structures and procedures, and that included our chain of command as well as how we deal with our uniform grievance policy and complaint managers. And so we had some personnel changes to make from a year ago in regard to that. But the policies themselves did not change.
Moving on to action items. Action item 8.1, approval of the FY21 audit.
Okay, in front of you, you have a bound copy of our audit report from Gorens and Associates out of Peoria. You also have an electronic copy in your board packet, as well as a full copy of the AFR. A couple things that I wanted to point out. We did have a relatively clean audit. We had one finding, the same finding that we've had for a number of years related to the segregation of duties, which simply means that we don't employ enough people in our business office to properly separate some of the things that we do. For instance, accounts receivable and accounts payable, payroll, accounting, that we have the same person doing those jobs in some instances. And this creates a concern for organizations in regard to segregation of duties. We do have some mitigating factors in place to try and deal with that, but this is common among small school districts. We do employ an independent treasurer to sign all of our bills and go over those kinds of things. What I did want to point out to you was, once again, our estimated financial profile score. We scored a perfect 4.0. That unfortunately, that's one thing I can tell you will change for next year in FY22, because one of the factors that goes into that is your ability to borrow money. Right now, we have very little outstanding debt, but as we move forward and issue these bonds over the next couple months or even a couple of years, that's going to decrease our ability to borrow. And so our score in that particular category will drop. If you look at the weight of that, that's not a substantial factor. One of the biggest factors is your cash on hand and year-end balance. What you see on the handout that I included was a comparison of the FY21 year-end balance across all funds compared to the FY20 year-end balance across all funds. And we ended the year June 30th of 2021 with approximately $11.5 million across all of our accounts. That's almost a $1 million increase over our fund balance from FY20. Many of these dollars are funds that we've been saving, both in our capital projects fund, that's the sales tax money that we collect, and in our operation and maintenance fund, in order to move forward with building projects that we know are coming up. So those funds will be available as part of our total dollar figure when we determine what direction we're moving forward, whether it's improving our existing facilities, building a new, or something else entirely different. We expect to have several $1 million available to us, and that's going to be one of the factors that we have to weigh moving forward.
Any discussion? to approve the audit.
Move to approve the audit for 2020 or 2021, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Barry,
Yes.
Bounds,
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Smough,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Ballmer.
Yes.
Number 9, information discussion items. Item number 1, or 9.1 is the FOIA request. I think there was just one. Smart Secure. Item 9.2, Lowell Johnson Foundation.
Okay, our district has once again been chosen by the Lowell Johnson Foundation to receive grant awards at both of our elementary and our intermediate school. This is an award that we've received in the past. The foundation has been very generous with local elementary schools, and we've been able to use those funds to complete some special projects. At Apollo Elementary, we've seen a number of parents and students and families, not just during the school year, but during the summers as well, take advantage of the new shelter that we were able to construct with those funds. A few years ago at New Boston Elementary, we were able to install an indoor climbing wall. And I think the foundation has allowed us to do some special projects that really affect a lot of kids that we might not otherwise be able to move forward with. So we really want to thank the Lowell Johnson Foundation for those gifts.
Further discussion or questions? Moving to item 9.3, exceed grants.
And Julie might be able to help me out a little bit with talking about the Mercer County Schools Excellence in Education Foundation. They continue to support classroom level projects in our district and have recently awarded 10 classroom level grants to teachers across the district that wrote for a particular need within their classroom. The grants typically come in the amount of about $5,000, or excuse me, about $500 for a total of $5,000 donated just recently. And they have been doing this now for a few years as they continue to grow their assets. And I know they're looking forward to trying to move forward with some larger projects in the future. Is there anything else you'd like to say
Just
about?
that Angie has done an amazing job on the webpage for McSeed, so thank you for that. And there is a donation link there in case anyone wants to know. On the award winners are on the Facebook page or the
Oh, yeah. Did you
website
wanna-
now.
You gonna say something to that, or?
I mean, I can announce the names of our most recent winners. They were Allison Lefevre in first grade at Apollo, Natalie Nelson in sixth grade at the intermediate, Kathy Olson in second grade at Apollo, Arian Call, music teacher in New Boston, Amanda Carson, our district math coach, Amy Malberg, our Title I reading teacher in New Boston, Samantha Duncan, a second grade teacher from New Boston, Stacy Sharp, our kindergarten teacher at Apollo, Kristen Reek, our music teacher at Apollo and the intermediate school, and Ashley Stice, a second grade teacher in New Boston. And so, again, those have supported classroom level projects across the district.
All right, moving to item 9.4, facility study, survey, and referendum question.
I'd like to start just by reminding everyone that the facility study was actually an idea brainstormed by the board in November of 2019. We actually retained Gray Architects in February of 2020 and have been working towards some district-wide solution since that time. All of that information is available on our website. and has been for many months, depending on which piece that we're talking about. The full facility study, which covers several hundred pages, as well as the survey, the comments. I know I've had some questions since a few of our recent meetings about when those things might be released, but they've been discussed at previous board meetings, and they're all available to the public in the blue box under our board agenda meeting and minutes page. And I'd encourage you to look at those things if you've got questions, and help you better understand the path that we've been moving down and how we've gotten where we're at.
So I guess I would start by just briefly adding, when I talked about earlier, we're in tough times. These are tough decisions. And so I don't think anybody on this board, I don't think anybody's have a personal agenda to help themselves. I think everybody's got the mindset of trying to help, doing the best they can for the students and the taxpayers. So I'm proud of that. But we are at a kind of a crossroads where we all have our opinions, and for everybody has valid reasons for those. There's pros and cons to both, whichever route. There's two things that I was thinking about that we've pretty much said, but I kind of wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement on this, because I think we can agree on this. The two items, and we can discuss them, is one, we've said that we didn't want to RIF any teachers, that we wanted to absorb that in for however long it takes through attrition, or them, I guess, attrition through retirement, or them going somewhere else. Do we agree on that as a board? I mean, is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was part of the original conversation.
Yeah.
I know that was
Yeah,
the
Tim,
first thing. Oh, go ahead, Tab.
No, I was just saying that from day one, we weren't gonna have to cut anybody, even principals. So I mean, that was one of the selling points.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're on board with that. And that does play into the savings, the amount of savings. I think the question came up of would we save $1 million? And the answer is we don't know exactly what we'd save, and we wouldn't say that. If we did that, we wouldn't say that. Certainly we wouldn't save it immediately. That would be as we work that way, getting, I don't know how you would say it, balanced with our staff. Okay, so the other item that I was thinking about that I thought we can all agree on, especially, we as a board, not only we deal with COVID, we're dealing with the facility study, and then we had our county taxes. The raise in the EAV really was surprising to everybody. And so that has changed the game a little bit for us as well, I believe. And so some for the good, some for the bad. But I guess my question is the board, do we agree that we do not want to cause any EAV increase in this next phase of our projects?
We mean,
You mean
you mean
rating.
tax rate?
Or tax rate, yeah.
I think that was another piece of what we'd like to do, is to be able to do something without increasing that rate. But the EAV is gonna probably go up on whatever that assessment is, I mean, that's nothing under our control. It's just if the property values go up, then that automatically gets us more funds at the same rate. So that's out of our control, but we're assuming that will happen.
Yeah, that was kind of, when we were starting with the survey, to me, I remember we were 17 million was kind of that earmark number. We thought kind of the minimum that we needed to get any projects done. And when the EAV went up and we realized that, hey, we can bond almost 17 million without affecting the tax rate, there's no reason to ask for more money. Kind of where I thought we were at.
Right, and I misspoke a little bit with my words, but Yeah, so the EAV is somewhat out of our control, but we don't want to do anything to cause the tax rate to go up off of a facility, building or improvements.
In case everybody doesn't understand what EAV is, that's the assessed or equalized assessed value. So that's what the county says your house is worth. That's what your taxes are based off of and what you pay. And our tax rate is a fixed, what is it, 4.5?
483
Or 483. Okay, so it's 4.83
is the estimated rate.
is our estimated rate for our tax rate as a district. So if we don't change our tax rate and your assessed value doesn't go up, you don't pay any more taxes than the year before. But if your assessed value goes up, even though we haven't changed our rate, your taxes go up a little bit. So sometimes that's confusing. So want to make sure everybody understands that.
And that's some about what people complain about and some about what they're excited about, because when they get ready to sell their house, they're like, oh, my property's not worth as much, but when they're paying the taxes on it, they're like, man, I wish I wouldn't have to pay so much taxes. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
And I think one of the reasons why King's Financial was so certain we would have increase in EAV every year was the main problem, depends on which side you're looking at, is the farmland values they're trying to equalize them in the state of Illinois. And that'll be a mandatory increase on farmland values for 15 years now, still to come. Sadly, if you're on the farmer's end of that, that's not good. But that's one thing we can know fairly for certain that will keep going up every year and increase the amount. Again, not because of the rate, but because of the value of the farmland, that would increase funds to the district that we wouldn't have to raise the rate. But yes, thank you, Illinois. And maybe it would help. And this is kind of where board things are difficult because we have committee meetings, we have regular board meetings, and how many of you love to come to committee meetings? Aren't they fun? I mean, and so a lot of times what we discuss isn't necessarily seen by the public. And I don't know if the board would mind, for all the people who came here to listen tonight, maybe kind of a timeline of how things have gone with this process. Just kind of, so, a lot of people like, it seems rushed, and that we could, inform everybody how this, what all the steps we have taken in the meantime. If somebody would like to give it a shot, or
I don't know that I have the
well, kind of a
exact
general
timeline.
idea.
Yeah. So we started in what was this?
In November.
November.
After you told us after you got back from the school board convention.
Yeah, it was
that-
kind of your fault.
that-
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was
you
2019.
talked to an architectural firm
Yeah.
about facility studies.
Yes. So that was 2019. So it was November 2019. And then in March, we interviewed, probably February, we interviewed, was it March?
Well, we voted in March.
Yeah, we interviewed in January and February, interviewed architectural firms. And we came to a consensus as a board to hire Bray in March. And once we hired Bray, they did a complete facility study. They went and talked to all of our administrators. They talked to some teachers within the buildings, got the growing pains, they got the good. They came back to us with not recommendations, just hard facts on here's where your buildings sit. And then that was probably June, July, when we got that information of 2020. And so as a committee, the Building and Grounds Committee, we digested that information, asked questions. We started formulating options of what we wanted them to look at for us. And I don't remember all the options, but it was probably 20 plus.
Quite a few.
It went to Q, however many.
Yeah, right. They were using letters. So so every time we would just be in a board meeting, we'd say, well, how much would it cost to do this? And they would write it down. We might give them 10 options at one committee meeting, and then come back to us the next committee meeting and say, okay, well, to do this option would cost you roughly this. And they have ways of coming up with costs based on historical data that they have on projects they've done. So they kind of know roughly what it's going to cost a square foot. So we're dealing with budget numbers at that point. So, you know, one thing I learned being in the construction industry, if an architect tells you 15 million, when it goes out to bid, there's a good chance it could be 20. There's a good chance it could be 12. You just never know. And so they came back to us with all these different options. And as a committee, I say committee, but really the majority of the board was involved in those. And we all had some say and input to give out their options and things like that. So we all worked through that. We would kind of nix, oh, that's not a very good option. That doesn't make sense. And we kind of landed on a couple. We wrote the survey. I have the draft of the survey was survey proof for approval was July of 2021. So we approved that at the August meeting, August 2021. I don't remember when surveys went out, probably no October, September.
Late August.
Late
They-
August.
They,
Okay.
they actually went to staff on our first day of school, I believe, that they had an opportunity to complete them. And
Right.
they were mailed to all of the voting address, all the addresses within our school district.
Right, and we hosted 2 informational meetings, one here and one in New Boston. I recognize some faces that made it to those, where we were able to go over questions, concerns that the community had. When we approved that survey, we went through 3 or 4 different iterations of that survey. And I'll be the first to admit that at the time, I didn't think it was confusing. I thought it got out the message that the board was trying to give. And since then, since talking to some of the community members, I can understand why it was confusing. I know some people did not get the surveys, or it went to their junk email, and you know, they didn't get it in time. So I know there was some problematic issues with the survey. I know that we got what did we get on the return rate? Was it 30%?
A little over 20.
A little over 20%.
Which was very average
Which is,
for
yeah.
the industry.
The survey company that wrote the survey for us, that's all they do are surveys. So they understand scientific method. 20% return on that is what they thought would be a good. Now you might say 20% of the community, but when you realize that when you have a referendum, so what we did this survey for was, if we put out a referendum, will it pass? And what does that referendum need to say? And so 20% is more representative of the people that are actually going to come out and vote. So that's why 20% sounds like a small number, but from what they're telling us with their history, that 20% is a good sample of the community. So we got the results back in November.
Late October.
October. And so then we had a couple of board meetings where we presented the findings. I know community was here. We answered some questions, went over some of those things. So, and then that kind of leads us to where we're at now. We've been trying to digest this survey for the last few building and grounds meetings. And now we didn't think that the word was not out. We thought that everybody saw the results of the survey and that, but evidently in the last couple of weeks, words actually gotten out, which we weren't trying to keep word from getting out. We would have liked this to have been maybe 3 months ago or so, but we're kind of up against the timeline. We have if we do want to put a resolution on the ballot, that has to be done by March.
Yeah, March 21st is the deadline. So we have to make a decision, and you'll see that it's a discussion item on this agenda, and likely will be again in February. We'll have to have it as this, whatever path we decide to move down as an action item, no later than our March meeting. in order to have a question that the public could weigh in on on the June 28th consolidated primary.
So that kind of leads us to where we're at today. I guess from my personal, I think a couple people that have spoke said that, you know, that no matter what decision we make, it's not going to be right for everybody. You know, we try to make a decision that impacts the majority of the district in a positive way. And if it has to impact people in a negative way, we try to keep that amount to minimal. But you know, I do appreciate all the feedback. Every email I've gotten, I've tried to respond to everybody. So, you know, keep the opinions, keep the dialogue coming, because you know, we will at the next building and grounds meeting, we'll discuss that. I use points from emails that I get from people or conversations that I have from people during those. So I took notes tonight based off of what some people said. So, you know, we'll make sure to discuss those things in the building and grounds meeting, and appreciate the info. So thank you.
Any other discussion?
Is it okay if I say something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just hard for me to jump in because I don't see who else is trying to talk, so I didn't want to cut anybody off. My problem with the joint elementary is the same thing from the beginning. Is I just don't think we have, you know, a representative of everybody's opinion. I don't think the bulk of New Boston and Alito want to lose their elementary schools, and it's not because I don't think they could use a new elementary school. It'd be awesome. I mean, there's no doubt that building a new school for those guys would be great. But I just think the high school is the worst building now that Joy's closed. It costs us the most money to maintain. It's going to continue to be the most expensive no matter what we do, because it's 2 stories. I think the referendum would be a waste of time, because I just don't think they're going to vote for it. And I don't think time is something we want to waste. You know, I still would love some way to get a black and white, I don't know. I'm sure Petrie's got a way to send out a mass text or something to get everybody's opinions real fast, to somehow get more than 20% of people to respond, because people are awake now. They are paying attention to it. And I don't think if you tap into that, then you're just wasting everybody's time. And I apologize myself. In May, you know, I started having some family problems, and I missed May, June, July, probably building and grounds meetings. The last time I left, Bray was talking about a joint elementary, and I kind of laughed it off, like, yeah, you're going to take me Boston Alito's elementary school. Right, that'll go over great. And then a few months later, the survey comes out, and here we are. And I don't feel there's a reason people are upset. I understand it. I've gotten 15 or 20 emails and texts this week. I don't know, 5 or 6 last week, and the week before that about the same. And overwhelmingly, I think I've had 3 that are for Joy Elementary, and the rest are all wanting to do something with the high school or keep Apollo. I'm up for any kind of variation of the high school building on the intermediate. I love Fred's idea. That was amazing. We've actually discussed that a couple times. But that's where I'm at. And I want to thank everybody for speaking tonight, by the way. I didn't say that earlier, but that's what I got.
I just add to what Tab was saying. I appreciate everybody coming out. I don't want you to think these building meetings that we have are just, oh, they're perfect. We all get along great. There's no opinions, none of that. Once again, I've got the old AHS, that's my schooling. And once again, we hired Bray, we listened to our administrators. They told us these were their ideas that we went with. We tried to create a survey. It took us months, and we still, when it went out, I don't think anybody was totally happy with it. So I don't want you to think that we're all just, oh, we're one-sided. This is a huge decision. I heard a couple times mentioned tonight, there's no hurry. This school district's been together for 12 years. I voted for it. I mean, I was completely for it. I'm on this board to try to help take the community for the next 50 to 75 to 100 years. I mean, that's what I got on here for. Did I think it was going to be popular? No way. You talk about this survey. I mean, I've had physically people mad in my face about the survey and this and that and whatever. Usually there's not much of this going on, and these, of course, it pays a lot. We won't talk about that to be on this board, but we signed up for it. I'm okay with it. I know each and every one of you. I don't have any problem. You want to talk about anybody that's called me, emailed me? I'm not much of an emailer. Send me your phone number. I'll talk to you. I'll meet with you, whatever. This is important. But I don't want anybody in this room to think that we're all direct and it's got to be Aledo. It's got to be Joy. It's got to be New Boston. I want to do what's best for the kids to start with. And then we do have our job is to pay attention for the taxpayers too. And we don't want to raise your taxes. And those implications need to be talked about. The only thing I will say, as far as it may not have to be decided on next month, if we're not going for an increase in your taxes, it don't have to be until April, correct? That we make a decision.
The advisory referendum kind of question, that due date's April 11th, which actually is
Okay, so
before,
we do have to be
before our
in
April meeting. So we've got to make a decision in March if we want a ballot question
Yeah.
of any kind.
So I would just tell everybody, I appreciate you coming out, talk to your friends, your neighbors, your kids. This isn't just a yes, no, easy. This is not easy stuff. There's a lot of great concepts, ideas, and they all make sense to the person that came up with them. And we have to put all those thoughts together and once again, try to do what we see as best. Not even, hardly anybody even brought up busing. Busing is terrible for us right now. I mean, there's so many things for us to consider. I've gotten more grief over us not having city bus routes just in Aledo when we had to stop it for a while. So there's much beyond, I don't want to, sorry, I can't remember the name of the teacher back here. Fred, I'm sorry. But, the things that you brought up, we're not in the school every day. I don't think about the 6-foot thing in the cafeteria. When I went through there, I think that cafeteria is fine. Everybody's just whining about, today's world. So that's how I look at things like that. And I'm not making this to be light. I understand it's a different world. I don't have the same TV we had, when I was a kid. That's a great analogy. You see what I'm saying? From the standpoint of where I am and thinking about spending taxpayers' money, that cafeteria is used 1 hour a day. So think about, those are the types of things. So I could ramble on. I just want to tell all of you, this has not been just fun and games. I mean, there's been a lot of challenges within this board, and it needs to be. And every one of us are here for a reason to try to do the best for the kids, the community, and the taxpayers. I'll leave it with that. Thank you for coming out. Come back.
I think that when we built this survey, there's probably a piece of it that each one of us could agree with. We all didn't have the same, I don't think any of it, well, I shouldn't say any of us, but they all didn't match our own. We only would have had one question. We had one that kind of came to the top. We had others that would fit the other members, their idea, what they thought the public would agree with or want to vote for. So I think that was a problem. When that survey went out, each of us, whoever's opinion that was, thought, well, they're surely going to pick my idea or they're your idea or whatever. I think each of us thought that there's no way they're going to pick that idea. And so then when you come to that and there's not a huge consensus on, 70 or 80% of the people wanting the exact same thing, then all of a sudden you're looking at each other and saying, well, they kind of like my idea, well, they kind of like your idea, and they kind of like, and it doesn't come as obvious as what it should be. And there's, again, there's good reason for all the different ideas that are there. And we thought we covered most everything, and there might be some other scenarios that we could do. But I think that was the main problem with the survey, is we all thought that there's an idea in there that fits our liking the best, and surely that the public will want that idea. I don't think any of us intended on having an argument when it was all said and done. We thought that something would come to the top and people would show us in a big majority of how they wanted this thing to go, and we could just proceed. That's what our hopes were anyhow. But everybody kind of probably thought it would be their idea and not necessarily one of the other ideas that were on the list.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd add on to there is, I mean, there was a lot of stuff I didn't like about it, but the majority of the board was also going that way. And I think it's important for us to try to stick together as much as we can. So in my mind, I was compromising for other people's thoughts. And I think that's what we were each doing. And we were being guided by someone that does surveys all the time. So we were trusting their judgment as
that
well.
doesn't know our communities either. That's the,
Yeah.
the survey companies out of like Wisconsin or somewhere. So, they're solely reliant on us, and so, I think if it would have been a survey writer that had a little bit more history of our district, they might have cautioned us on some things.
I think they
maybe
tried to do that, but I don't know how.
that we didn't listen.
Well, I don't know that either. I think they tried to, that's what all the
Yeah.
interviews and stuff were about, is to try to get a feel for that. But
Right.
we had good intentions for everything, and like I said, I don't think the whole thing is blown up yet, but we thought we were making every step as best we could, and maybe we did, and that there's some opposition to whatever we're gonna do, no matter what that decision might be. There's gonna be people that are not satisfied with it. It's just, we gotta continue to work our way through it and make sure we've taken the best option.
I don't even know where to start, Mike. I've been asked by a lot of people in the last probably 3 weeks. I'm sure I know all of you have gotten most of the same emails I have, and I've probably gotten, we're all getting our individual things. And one of the chief questions I've been getting is how we arrived at the site of Joy as the proposed or preferred, I suppose, if you look at the survey, site for a consolidated elementary. I don't have a good answer for that question. And I don't know if that's just me being new to the board at the time. I wasn't paying attention to that, or if it wasn't a buildings and grounds committee meeting. And I talked a little bit with Julie about it, and I have some ideas, but if any of the rest of you.
I think it was due to the fact that it has a cafeteria and a gym that are still usable.
Right.
And so if you were to put an addition on there, you could tear down the problematic part, which is the 3-story part.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're building a school, the biggest expense is the gym and the cafeteria. So you're kind of able to alleviate that cost. Is that not correct, Scott? Is that
Yeah,
what we were kind of thinking?
and not just a cafeteria and kitchen and a gymnasium, but they're large restrooms, and
Right.
even though you wouldn't utilize the locker rooms, you've got a lot of bathroom facilities already within that building, and just to give you an idea of the cost of those kinds of things, just last week, Sherrard had announced, some intent to move forward with an addition at their elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
which encompasses a gymnasium and a couple classrooms, a couple conference rooms, and some bathrooms. And they're estimating that at well over $6 million. So there's substantial savings to be had by utilizing an existing facility, and also one that has a footprint that's easily expanded. Our high school's physical site is really tough for expansion. And Fred's right, the most usable space is currently used by PE and athletic teams right now.
Yep.
Here on this site, we've got a high water table, a lot of low ground that requires some fill, although that seems to be going very well with this project. But if we were trying to move farther into the southwest corner, I think we didn't encounter a lot more difficulty that way. And so the suitability of the physical site is part of that decision as well.
I would say the busing concern has been, several of you have emailed us and I hear it. My kids started going to school here 2 years before consolidation. And every year at parent teacher conferences, I asked for the same thing on my survey when you get done, shorter bus times. I don't want to burden the 3,600 or so people in Alito with longer bus times. On the same token, when I tell people my kids started getting on the bus at 6:40, 6:45 in the morning in kindergarten, and then they peaked at 7:15 last year, and now we're back to like 7:05 getting on the bus in the morning. Some people are like, that's ridiculous, and other people are like, oh, 6:40, that's cute, you know, and that's people actually know what I'm talking about. That's folks out in Eliza and out
Started at 6:20.
in the Bay. Yeah, exactly. So it's
And 4:30 drop off.
right. You know, so, you know, we're talking kids are on the bus and at school for 10 and a half hours a day. So I'm especially sensitive to the idea that I don't want kids to be on the bus any longer than they have to.
I take them to July.
Right. And my hope is, I guess, that if we end up with a consolidated elementary or any building closures, that some of the expense that we're not going to be putting into these buildings is going to be able to apply to transportation in a meaningful way, while knowing that transportation is a constant moving target. What's important to you know, people in the West End right now depends on which building is most relevant to your students today. In 5 years, everybody's kids will be at a different building, whether that building's in Joy or New Boston or whatever. Your little people who haven't gone to school yet are going to end up who knows where. So, you know, just know we're all I'm trying to balance all of these things that you guys have told us that are important to you, with the knowledge that, and I mentioned this, that Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, but for many of you who weren't here, I'll share it. And when I graduated in '93, Alito, 3 buildings, 1,200-ish student body. Now, you know, here we are, it's 30 years later, almost 1,200-ish kids, and there's 5 buildings across the district. That's consolidation. That's, you know, it's just an end result of consolidation. But to me, you know, a frustrating thing is surely we can find some way to save the taxpayers' money and make a better learning environment for kids by consolidating operations in a couple of buildings, because it just doesn't seem to make sense to me that that same number of students needs more square footage instead of less. And like, so we've talked to administrators of all the buildings. We've had pre-K teachers come in and talk to us about the value of kids starting off at the same place. And I think that's important because to me, like, they're trained educators. You know, I am not a trained educator, so I have very little insight in that. So I lean on those folks to give me, you know, sort of an idea of what they think works best for them. So that all those things get poured into these meetings and these discussions, and here we are. So I just thank you all for coming and all of your insight and everything. Just know we're just trying to figure it out. So that's all I got to say about it, I guess.
I want everyone in the public to know that I am more than willing to talk to anyone. And I am willing to talk to anyone face to face. Emails are great, you know, messages are great, but if we're face to face, we can communicate so much better with each other. And so I'm open to that, whether I know you or not. So please take me up on that at any time. Some of my thoughts. My family's been living the transportation nightmare like you have. And so we're very sensitive to that. Part of the reason I think consolidation for the transportation issues is that every bus on the West End has to go to New Boston to drop off, and then go to Joy, and then go to Alito, to possibly 2 different buildings. And so that gradual time from the drop off in New Boston to get to the high school as maybe the final endpoint, that's a 25-minute reason for being so early right there. And that's that just came with the territory when consolidation came. A centralized elementary would solve part of that problem. Do I want to get rid of the school in New Boston? No. I have a pro and con list for both sides. So I love New Boston. My kids all went there. I went there. But I also like the idea of the kids being together from the very beginning. And I know we had a discussion about this one in one of our buildings and grounds meetings. When a new family is moving to your district, what are they looking for? What's the focus? The main thing they're looking for. And if they're coming as a young family, it's the elementary schools. You know, I suppose if you come with some older kids, it would be the high school. But most districts, you know, that's kind of their focus is on the elementary schools. I really want to do what's right by them. And so suffice it to say, I can see both sides. But I want to do what's best for the kids academically. And so I'm really torn. But, you know, we came at this with the survey, and then we were going to write a referendum based on the survey results and then see how it went. And that it makes me nervous. We're backing off of our word. You know, what we had set out and we said we were going to do. So like I said, I talked to so many people and I understand completely. But I also want to go back a little bit and say, I would love to have had the community concern when how we were harming Joy by shutting down the Joy facility. I mean, I was concerned about it. I think I made that clear at the time. But so where this will end, I guess we'll find out in a couple of months. But my focus is always the kids number one, us adults are number two. And that's really hard sometimes because we all want what we want, but the kids are first. So we'll see how that goes. But again, thank you for coming out. And I am, again, invitation, talk to me anytime. I'm happy to talk to anyone. I think all of us are. So.
Yeah, I've not heard, and as far as I know, all the board members were willing to talk. I know we're getting lots of emails. I'm excited that actually the community, I'll be honest with you, has woke up to this a little bit now that we're coming to crunch time. I mean, there's more people in this room now than there was in the two facility study or
There were 13 at each
survey.
At the
survey
survey.
at the survey community forum. So I've got more emails today than people that responded almost since we've started this. Well, I don't know about that, but I got a lot today. I think we all got a lot today. So I appreciate that the community, you guys, the people online, and hopefully, obviously, there's some media coverage and everything else. Hopefully, people are going to help us get to this decision because we're on a time crunch at this point. And I just wanted to make it known and clarify. I know we've talked about it in some other meetings, but you know, we've been at this since November of 2019, and there's been a lot of changes outside of the school board since then. So we've talked about, and I think Mr. Petrie's setting it up, but I just want to clarify, we have a busing program that helps us lay that out. And so, and I don't know if that's going to be in the transportation or in the building and grounds, but we talked about doing busing routes currently, how they are for everyone in the district, and then also currently for elementary. And then do it again to run those numbers if we had a consolidated school versus what we're doing now. I think that will, because busing is a huge issue, and you did mention it earlier, 55 minutes waiting. Now, I mean, that concerns me. I'm not going to address that any farther with the administration because I know that their hands are tied with they're doing everything they can. So I also want to mention that. I know busing's been taking a beating, and it's not because of this board's fault. It's not the administrator's fault. It's the situation we're in. We're doing the best we can. They're doing the best they can. And so I understand your guys' frustration. You know, it's it's what it is. We're doing the best we can. That's why. But maybe those busing routes, if we see that, are going to let us know how many more kids, or maybe less, are going to be bused if there would be a consolidation versus two. And I don't know, does that do time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd have the times as well. So I think that would be an important piece of information for the board to look at.
And it'd tell us if we're increasing routes, decreasing routes, because if we're increasing routes greatly, we're already having trouble finding bus drivers. So that's kind of the problem that we.
Right, well, and that's what, I mean, so I think having those routes are gonna make a big deal. The other thing is the cost of a consolidated building in Joy versus the upgrades to Apollo and New Boston that we would make, not the 17 million to 17 million, but what would we actually do and what we would get from that. I know Mr. Petrie's been working with Bray, trying to get them up, we get some current numbers. I mean, you know, lumber prices and steel prices skyrocketed and they went down. I think they're going back up again. They're down.
Well, yeah, I guess.
So I mean, it's been a moving target and we've been at this. So I think current numbers, and I think with not just the elementary schools, when we're looking at that cost or that pricing, maybe get an updated price on what we would do in the high school if we built the consolidated versus what would we do in the high school if we update Apollo and New Boston. I think it's just, I know there's been a lot of information and those numbers have changed on different things at times and for valid reasons. I don't think anybody's trying to hide anything, but I think those getting that information out, whether it's in the transportation or the building and grounds meeting, will give us fresh information to work with because we're having to make the decision now, not from November of 2019. So.
Do we have the building and grounds meeting set?
Yes.
When is that next one?
That's our-
Just so everybody knows.
Standard date.
It's this first Monday,
14th, wasn't it? No, that's fine.
first Monday. First Monday, February
Second.
Second.
second, so it's February 8th? No, February
No, it'll
7th.
be February 7th. February 7th.
February 7th is the next building and grounds.
All right. Any other discussion on that?
Sometimes that building.
6 p.m.
6 o'clock.
Okay. We will move to item number 10, administrative reports. Administrators, or any additions?
We announced our second quarter Powell Peace Prize winners today, and Avery Boss was our second grade winner, and Leland Adolphson was our fourth grade.
Anybody else, any additions?
I'll just give a shout out from last night. We had some success at seventh grade volleyball. Our winning a travel banner made out of hallway, as well as our seventh grade boys. All right, we have some silver there throughout the whole season.
Julie mentioned the Steve stuff, that teachers at New Boston were able to purchase Apple TVs along with iPads to be able to stream directly to the TVs in the classroom, make them much more interactive for them. So we appreciate that. Normally we have about 3 to 5 teachers each year that will typically win that grant from MCSD, so we appreciate their support.
Any questions or comments from the board on the administration reports? Okay, I would accept a motion and go into closed session.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Downs,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Smock, Wagner,
Yes.
Gates,
Yeah.
Emmer,
That was me, yes.
Barry.
Yes.
All right. We will resume at 8:15.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. thanks for
Coming out.
coming out.